Hey guys, it's Nick, and today I'm going to be talking about product development, but more specifically, I'm going to focus more on the research and the design and development phases. The last phase I would consider is the marketing aspect. Anyone who's talked to me knows that I feel like if you actually build a great product, selling it is easy because then you don't have to exaggerate what it does. And then when people start to push back and tell you your product doesn't actually do what it says, or it's not as easy or as simple to use as they say, then you don't have to backpedal, you don't have to explain yourself and all that stuff. And and if someone does tell you that your product is hard to use, don't fight it. Just be like, all right, well, let me hear more about that. What do you think is hard to use about it? How would you change it? Or how would you improve it? And this doesn't necessarily mean that they'll have all the solutions or they'll have the right ideas, but they'll kind of give you an idea of where to look to try to improve your product. So in this case, I think of the quote by Henry Ford, which goes something like, if we had asked people what they wanted, they would have told us faster horses. Obviously they built a car instead. So that's kind of what I use as an example, where you want to get the feedback because you're trying to figure out what goal are these users trying to achieve? What are their expectations? What are their wants? You want to understand those things so you can kind of figure out what the end result you're looking for, whether it may look a lot different from what you started with than what you ended with. So with that being said, we're going to cycle back to research. So generally you have a pre-launch phase, and this is what I would consider like you haven't built it yet, the thing doesn't exist yet, it's just an idea somebody had and they're kind of talking about it, or they had a meeting or a kickoff meeting to kind of talk about their idea, and now we need to figure out why will we do this. All right, aside from trying to make money, that's not what I'm worried about. Obviously that's part of it. I don't care about the money aspect. What I care about is what problem is being solved. Is it making life easier? Is it an entertainment thing? Is it fun? Is it moving, like physically, or is it emotionally moving, like music? Is it a music app? Why are we doing this thing? So the reason why I think this is important is because when we have to make tough decisions, if we have multiple features that we want to add, let's say we have feature A, B, C, D, E, and F, we might only have time to do features A, B, and C, or we might only have time to do certain features, that we requested or had suggested through the brainstorming process. And we got to make those tough decisions. We're gonna have to come back to the whys, because the whys are going to help us remember what features are most important for launch. So when I'm talking about your launch features, this is your MVP. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, MVP stands for minimal viable product. So these are just the essential features that are necessary for this thing to essentially have legs at launch. These are all the basic features that users are going to want to be using most of the time. These are your most important features. So even after launch, these are the features you're going to want to take care of. You're going to want to refine over time as we find out they need to be improved. Or maybe there's another feature that can be added on to an existing feature. Or, feature that can be added on. And that's because someone suggested it. Or maybe through user research, we're finding that people are trying to use it a certain way, but the current app doesn't work that way, or the website. So this is what we're thinking about, when we're talking about the research and the minimal viable product. So again, you're going to want to know your whys, because this is what's going to help you make those hard decisions of, we can do features A, C, and E, but we'll have to come back to B and E and F, or whatever I said. So just keep that in mind. So once we kind of have this idea of what we're making and why, then I feel like it's a little bit easier to start making a bit of a research plan. So first of all, we need to know who's our target market. Who the hell is going to want to use this thing? I've talked to people, and I've had people share ideas with me, and because I've been in the app development and design industry for over 8 years, and a lot of people run a lot of ideas by me, and a lot of times I'll ask them, okay, well, who's going to use this? And they just stare at me like deer headlights. They don't know. They can't think of who exactly is the person that's going to be using this. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll figure that out, and then we'll talk later. We never talk later. But, that's one of the most important questions, because this is who you're building it for. If you just try to build a general app and you try to make it just for everybody, you don't really have an app that's really good for anyone. It's not really geared towards a niche target market. It's not really for any group of people. It's just not really for any audience, any age group. And it's just kind of this weird, mutated website application that really doesn't help anyone. It's just confusing and frustrating, and you just waste a lot of time and money and resources, and you wasted your team's time and money, you wasted their energy, and it's just this whole thing, it's just not a good time. So that's what I'm just trying to get at here. So the other thing with the research plan is, after you have your target market figured out, you're going to want to get feedback from these people. You're going to want to try to get their answers, and you might be like, but Nick, they never want to answer those questions, they never want to give feedback. Well, maybe give something back to them first. Then they'll be more inclined to do it. It can be a gift card. It can be like a $20 Visa gift card. Look, if you're willing to spend hundreds and thousands and maybe even millions of dollars on sales and marketing, you can spend $100 to pay people to give you their feedback on stuff that you may want to build. And the other thing is, when you try to ask questions, you try to understand like whether the product, the thing you're working on is worth doing, you're going to want to ask objective questions. You don't want to guide their answers because they're just going to tell you what you want to hear. So that's why a lot of times I think when you start like the research phase, you start trying to get their feedback, be clear with them. We want your brutally honest answers. We don't want you holding back. We want to we don't want you to tell you what we want to hear. Like, we're just trying to figure out if this thing's worth building, right? We're not going to pay you more or less based on what answers you get. We're already giving you the gift card. We're already doing whatever we're giving. So, again, keep it objective. Don't try to guide their answers. Otherwise, you're not going to get an honest feedback. And you might find out later you wasted all your time because you spent your earlier research trying to guide their answers. So, again, this is to figure out, should we do it? So if you start finding out through the research, and you'll probably find out you need to build something a little different, as often as it goes, than you originally had envisioned. Once you find out if you should do it, then you kind of move in, what should it do? And this is kind of the fun phase of, I would say, this is like the unicorn land. This is anything is possible. We're not worried about resources. We're not worried about money. We're not worried about whether it's possible or not. We just want all the ideas as possible. We don't want to box us in yet. There will be a phase where we will have to kind of box some of our ideas because obviously we do have limitations and we do have restraints. But if you can make this wicked awesome idea and you can sell it to the people that can help you get legs or get it moving, then you're good. You'll be fine. It'll be fine. So, again, what should it do? This is your unicorn phase. Anything's possible. Have fun with it. My biggest philosophy with like brainstorms is don't do brainstorms to validate ideas. Make it clear that these are the goals of the brainstorm. This is what we're trying to accomplish. What are your ideas? No judgment, no validation of whether it's a good idea or not. All right? If you ask questions about the idea, it's to understand the idea better. Because once you start trying to validate ideas, people start closing in, they start clamming up, and they don't want to share them because they're afraid that their ideas are going to be judged. If you're like a poor leader or a poor meeting facilitator, people already don't feel comfortable sharing their ideas. So if you have a history of that, then that's something you need to work on. It's just trying to open up more to your team, become more open-minded to their ideas. Like, again, these brainstorms are not to get the best ideas right away. They're just to get ideas. And then what you do later is you meet with the team of like the higher-ups or whoever I would say the lead developers, the lead designers, the lead quality assurance testers, the product owner, the executive, periodically just to keep them in the loop. Then you can meet with them and share those ideas and kind of try to figure out what are the ones that are probably most important, what are the things that we probably need to do, what are the ideas that we can do within this time frame, etc. And then once you figure that out, come back to the team, get their ideas again, see what they think about the plan or the development plan or roadmap that you put together, and then go from there. Because you want to keep them involved all as much as you can, because since you had that brainstorm meeting, people may have had more ideas since then, or they may have thought about the ideas they gave more since then. So just keep that in mind. Always be kind of checking in with people here and there just to make sure you're not missing out on opportunities. So yeah, I kind of talked about the features. In this unicorn state, we're figuring out the features. How could it fail? This is an important question because, obviously we want to be optimistic. We want to go in and try to give this thing our best effort, but we also need to be realistic and be like, this thing sucks, or this thing doesn't do well, why would that happen, or in what way might that happen? Because once you start thinking about that, you can then start trying to figure out ways to kind of seal up those issues or potential problems when you actually go to build the thing. In regard to psychology, I talked about before with Carl Jung. He talks about the idea of we all have a darkness in us, we all have a shadow or evilness in us, or whatever you want to call it. And the reason why he says you need to accept this idea is because if you just assume you're all 100% around good person, you don't have bad ideas, you don't have dark thoughts or whatever, you are more susceptible to being taken over by your negative thoughts or being blindsided by it or becoming narcissistic or egotistical or arrogant or ignorant. And that's because you spend so much time believing that you're such this 100% awesome person that these negative thoughts and feelings can just take over at any time, which then means you're lashing out on people. You're getting emotionally attached to your ideas. Your ego is showing all the time. You're just overreacting a lot more than you necessarily need to. and you're pushing back when maybe there's a good idea in the room, and maybe it's just because you're jealous because you didn't come up with the idea. It could be a lot of things, but just be mindful of that. So when you have a product, always think about how could it suck, how could it fail, if how could that just potentially happen. So keep an open mind. Obviously, if you're dealing with an app or a website, you have privacy concerns you need to think about. These are people's safety to keep in mind. This is why I hate spam accounts. This is why I'm always trying to catch them, which is why I always report them. If I find out you're a spam account, I will report you. All right, sorry, that's the thing that upsets me. I'm passionate about it, so I got loud. So again, privacy and safety is always a big concern, so you're going to want to have that discussion too, because you don't want to build this thing and you build it halfway through and realize, oh, we didn't think about all this stuff about safety and privacy and the ways that it could fail. So just keep that in mind. So after we've done kind of this research phase, we've kind of worked with the team, we've collaborated, we built a roadmap kind of plan. We could then go to the design and development phase. And what we're going to do here is kind of try to figure out what resources we need. And this is like we've got the okay from the higher ups that we can do this. They're going to fund it, and they've given us some time to build it. So this design and development phase, we're trying to figure out who are the resources, what team do we need, what are the what's the word? Competencies that we need. What are the things like the programs? What programming languages are we going to use? What IT servers and whatnot are we going to use? Like, I'm not an IT guy. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I would talk to that person for that stuff because they're the expert. So you're going to have to build this team. I say no consultants because consultants, look, they come in, they build this thing, and they tell you what to do, and then they leave. And then if the other thing succeeds or fails, doesn't matter. They're not there. They're not there to take the hit. They're not there to take the kick in the face if the thing doesn't work, and they're not the one who has to solve the problems if it doesn't start working well, you know? So that's why I don't like consultants. I'd rather have people that are fully committed to the project, and, you know, we all win or we all fail or we all have to learn, you know? So, you know, my whole philosophy is when you build an app is you live and you learn, you make mistakes, make adjustments, just don't make excuses. Like, if something sucks, just fix it, or make a plan to fix it. Do your research, do user testing. Really invest those resources into making sure you have a good process for improving your projects. So, and then prioritizing those projects as well, or prioritizing those issues that need to be fixed. Another thing I'll do, like in regard to design, and I'm more focused on how things work. And not to say I don't care about aesthetics, or aesthetics aren't important, but look, at the end of the day, it's like, how your thing works is what's going to keep people coming back to your app. That's what's going to retain your users. I don't care how pretty the thing looks. If the thing sucks and it doesn't work well, people are going to stop using it and they'll use someone else's app that looks less pretty but works 100 times better. So just keep that in mind. But what I'm going to say here is gather stakeholder feedback on styling and aesthetic interest. Have them send you websites that they like. Have them send you color palettes that they like. And I say this because, again, I'm not worried about the colors too much necessarily, other than to make sure that they're easily seen. We're not using colors that are hard for people with visibility issues to read. So the reason why I say this is because otherwise, it doesn't matter how good the app looks, it doesn't matter how well you design it or whatever. If you don't figure out what kind of style or like design that the stakeholders have in mind, or you don't set any expectations for that, you might just spend a lot of time, you just waste a lot of time making a style guide or a branding guide to find out that they don't even like it because they had some other thing in mind, and you're not a mind reader. So, look, I'm very flexible on the design as long as it doesn't interfere with usability. So, just keep that in mind. I would also stress that, again, this is avoid rework later, is essentially the goal, and also set expectations that the websites, the examples that the stakeholders provided that they liked, let them know especially that the functionality might change, and probably will. You know, this is probably because, one, we have our own users. So as a user experience designer, or whoever your designers are, or your user researchers are probably going to suggest that you change the functionality in some ways from their, the sites that they got the original inspiration, because again, it's our own product, we have our own users, and things just need to work well. All right, if things don't work well, it doesn't matter how good this thing looks. And then lastly, again, we have to make our plan for MVP. I mentioned this is to prioritize. And then once you kind of prioritize the most important features of what you can do within the time frame of work you have, you can then break up into phases. And again, this is if you have an abundance of features and you can't get them all within a year or however long you have to build it, you just break it up into phases and you get into phase 2 or phase 3 or sometimes you might find that you have features you talked about in the initial planning, but maybe now because of what you've learned through the building process and what we've learned through launch and post-launch, those features are no longer necessary. They aren't really solving any problem, or they're not really useful. So we're not going to do those anymore. So anyways, lastly, we'll move on to the marketing. Again, don't worry. If it were up to me, I would say don't worry about marketing and branding details until the product is near completion. This is often because things change often during the design and development phase, and this is because during brainstorms, during collaboration sessions, we often end up changing things through discussion because we found out there were better ways to do things. We found our initial expectations or initial impressions or initial ideas weren't solving the real problems that we discovered through just building it and user testing throughout the process. And lastly, I would say wait for the help resources too, because again, the website's changing, and what has happened in my experience is they have you build a bunch of help resources, and then the website changes a lot between the time you built the help resources and created all the marketing materials that you set mixed messages about what the product is and what it's going to do and how it's going to work. And you have a technical writer, it's going to really annoy them because they just spent all this time trying to write up this really clear, awesome copy for people, and to find out that, oh, we changed all that stuff. All that stuff looks different now. Oh, you shouldn't use that image because now it looks like this. So that's, potential things that could happen as you deal with these help resources. So another thing when it comes to marketing, I typically just follow the what, so what, now what structure. So this is essentially to break that down this is what this product is. So what is, this is what the product does, and this is why you should care. And then lastly, now what is, this is how the hell you get this thing and when. So that's kind of what the what, now what, so what, now what structure is. And that's generally what I follow when I'm building like the home page or whatever, because I'm just trying to quickly let the person know, this is what it is, this is how it's awesome, this is why you might like it, and then this is where and when you can get it. So just setting those expectations. Overall, this is kind of just my overview of the product development cycle or process. Obviously, there's more details that go into it, but this is kind of like a general overview. Like I said, the pre-launch is essentially research. This is kind of to validate whether this thing is worth building. Then, once it's worth building, you kind of pitch to the idea, and the higher-ups are excited about it. They'll then want you to make a plan to build it. Then you share your plan, you tell them the resources you need, you figure out how long you might need to actually build it to the high-quality standard that you want. Again, I care about the quality more than the marketing. If you have an awesome product, then it's easy to sell. Then you could also rely on organic marketing, is where, if you don't know what organic marketing is, that's when the users promote your product without you telling them to do it, or without you asking them to. That's because they just really like your product. So, and then after you've done the planning phase, then you go to the build plus testing phase. So as you're designing wireframes or prototypes or mock-ups, that's when you can start kind of figuring out, building the clearer vision of what the product's going to look like. And then you can push it out, it's live, you've launched it, which then takes us to the post-launch, which you're always going to kind of be in this research and refine phase. Then you're going to test your ideas. Then you're going to build it once you kind of validated something is an improvement or it's worth doing. If it's not worth doing, obviously back to research and refine. If you can pick another feature, pick another problem, pick another bug, etc. Lastly, on this help resources phase, I might even, if it were up to me looking back at my experiences of working with teams, I would maybe just have a month dedicated to building the help resource website, and then having development focus on fixing bugs and refining the styling side of things. And another thing for developers, thinking about my experiences, is a lot of them are getting frustrated, at least the front-end developers, because they're becoming these full-stack developers that are essentially doing front-end and back-end work. And then you want them to have pixel-perfect styling. And what I would do is I would hire a styling developer, or a styling front-end developer. That's what they focus on. That's what their whole mission is. And if you can't validate having them for one project, I would say put them in multiple projects where their whole responsibility is just making sure that the site looks good on all devices. Doesn't matter if it's a phone, a tablet, or a desktop. It all looks amazing. Because that's one of the issues I had found is developers didn't have enough time to, fix the bugs, but also let the site look amazing. They didn't really follow the style guide. They didn't really follow the branding. So having a specific developer for that styling, CSS, SCSS, etc., I think would be a good move, in my opinion, because, again, full front-end developers are becoming more well-rounded now, which again means they're handling more of the front-end, back-end work, which is like double the work. And then if you add the styling pressure onto them, that's like triple work for them. And if you only give them like a week or 2 weeks to build the thing or do what they're supposed to, obviously you're going to end up with a lower quality result. So I would just keep that in mind. And with that said, I think that's all I have for now. So I hope this was useful or helpful to you guys understanding how I kind of view the product development process and how I would do some things differently based on my experiences. So again, this is my opinion, and I'm open to ideas and better ways of doing things. This is just from my experiences, so I just want to make that clear. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'll be doing more. It won't always be product development, but if I'm being honest, I'm trying to get a job right now, so I'm just trying to make sure people know that I know what I'm talking about to some extent. So thanks for watching, and enjoy your day. Bye-bye.